All right, we're officially live. We're officially live. I believe the audio is working. Let's roll.
Think about that. A method of finding proximate solutions to insoluble problems. Boy, has that spoken to me this week. And while I encourage people to see my remarks of July 30th that are still inform my position on this matter, I also associate myself with my colleagues who've preceded me here on this matter. I want to offer that as my metric to discuss a closing way for us to speak to this issue as lawmakers tasked with making this judgment for the people of Indiana. I'm not sure we ought to. I've shared with you already that I'm a person of faith, and I recognize how faith is informing really the predicate to even having a law to bar the cessation of pregnancies in the way in which this concurrence to SB 1 does. I recognize it because I am of that faith, and it informs my beliefs about what we ought to do. But like Senator Nagoski, I don't believe those ought to be put into law and compulsory upon people in a democracy like ours, where religion and its plurality has to be honored, even the people whose faith may not be evolved at all and with no religion at all. What informs this in my judgment is a belief of when life begins.
Hey, Corabora.
Because of that belief, it informs then the construct of the law that follows. And yet I believe that probably, even in this room,
Where'd you go?
many of us co-religionists, some not, would have difficulty or could at least identify where the difficulty lay. I don't think a person here, woman or man, doesn't believe that there's value in the life, the inchoate life that's in the woman, as well as the life of the woman herself. I don't believe that anyone believes that that tension between the two should be taken lightly. But how we regard that human life, whether we think of it as inchoate life developing into a fetus whose ability to survive in the early stages of development is so symbiotically related to the health of the mother herself and the care that the mother takes, knowing that's going on, or whether we want that life to be just seen as separate, tangible, individual. That's where I believe the proximate solution vexes us. I've prayed about this for discernment. I prayed that perhaps we would find a place where we could come to a place where we could talk about this more later, but it's before us tonight. So that's my first analysis about that issue, that we should not be making laws that are so deeply and intrinsically defined by a faith-based view to inform its rationale that it feels like an establishment of religion. I also think that we should be careful about abridging any religion, Madam President.
Yeah, we finally got it, Megan. I am very happy. It was literally just one small little setting, and that's all it was.
We know that in Islam,
just a small
which shares
setting,
Abraham as a legatee, that there's a belief that life begins at conception, but the soul doesn't really get ensoulment until 120 days post-fertilization. And so within that 4-month period, there's the opportunity for all kinds of intervention that might be necessary because of complications in the pregnancy and the mother's needs. In Judaism, there is even a difficult time to even speak about when life begins, because so much of their view of this is really set postpartum, at birth. And therefore, in some stages and with some pregnancies, their faith not only allows for intervention for medical necessity, it requires it. And then there's Christianity. I had a religious studies professor that praised the First Amendment, Madam President, one time because he said it was the greatest act of deregulation of religion ever. We deregulated religion in America. And that's why when we speak of Christianity,
thanks, Megan.
It is a large variegation.
This is definitely something brand new that we're giving a shot. Kind of fun.
Have a common confession, but is very different. And even in Christianity, not all Christians agree, even if they agree with when life begins, about how appropriate it is that that life should subordinate the life of the woman carrying it. So I'm concerned about the establishment of religion that I believe is implicit in this law, as has been said by my colleagues. I also think that one of the objectives I heard said by advocates of this bill, Madam President, was the balancing of the interests of life of the mother and the interests of life of the child. This often is called, in the science of this, viability, a word that we've used a little bit tonight, I've heard, but we really have never used either in the existing law that governs this matter now or the law that would presume to succeed it if adopted this evening. We hide it in words like 10 days or 20 days and so on. And I recognize that those are attempts at deciding on viability, but as also was mentioned this evening, viability can be different for every child dependent on their individual situation.
Pretty cool.
And while most medical people say that viability can be anywhere between 22 weeks and 24 weeks, even if viability occurs at 20 weeks, it often is still the ability of that child to live outside of the needs or outside of the support of the mother is still challenged and vexed by health conditions that complicate things. Even outside of these exceptions, which are a way of perceiving viability, this still operates as a ban that hadn't been there before. And so even if there's language that was modified from the first iterations of this bill to try to make it look a little bit like the exceptions that are listed in the current law that governs this, medical professionals are still going to be somewhat flummoxed and perhaps challenged by moving forward because they've never had to operate with those words that look like the words in our current law in the context of, except for the exceptions of life of the mother, rape and incest, a procedure that is now banned outright if this law is adopted. So it complicates the practice of medicine. So, by way of summary, using the metric of Reinhold Niebuhr's ideas, who said that democracy was a method of finding proximate solutions to insoluble problems, it seems to me that the concurrence in SB 1 is not a proximate solution for an insoluble problem in that it doesn't properly address when life begins, because for theologians and scientists it can vary. Among us, even people of faith, we can deeply believe when we think that life begins. As I shared with you before, as a person of faith, my statement about when my daughter was born, I believe God knew her before I met her mother. But I know that that's not the way of knowing that is empirical and scientific based. It is faith based. And I feel like it mars this law by informing its rationale for being passed. I don't think it is a proximate solution that to an insoluble problem when we legislate from one faith and don't take into account the diversity of faith in our country, even if we narrow it to those faiths that share the legacy of Abraham. And it's not a proximate solution to an insoluble problem that reckons well the limits the government ought to observe. Here I am, arguing for limited government.
Well, if doctors don't leave Indiana, they sure as hell are going to be afraid. They're going to be walking a very fine line practicing medicine here in Indiana.
With their own view of faith,
you know, they're going to be
personal, complicated, and best left.
Let's just say that the hospital lawyers are going to get paid
the dictates of
even
her
better
conscience, her faith, and the counsel of her health care provider. So, if Niebuhr is right, that we as lawmakers in the context of American democracy are supposed to be using it as a method to find a proximate solution to an insoluble problem, it is my belief, my colleagues, that this bill, this concurrence, doesn't really meet that metric, and I would ask that you defeat this concurrence, that we may come together later to try again and do better. Madam President, I thank you.
Senator Bohacek. For what purpose do you rise?
To kind of bill.
Senator Bohacek is
thank you, Madam.
recognized to speak on the concurrence.
Sorry, thanks. Thank you, Madam President, members of the Senate. I've got a whole piece of paper full of statistics and stuff, but, you know, every other year in the budget year, we come here, and I do it, and I pass out pins to celebrate Down Syndrome Awareness Day, 3/21. And we bring people in, and they come in, and, you know, we have a resolution, and that's great. But today, this bill offers no protection for them. So most of these folks are on guardianships, and unfortunately, they are assaulted at a 10 times rate of everybody else. The underreporting on this it's almost 85%. So I'm not a lawyer, but what happens to somebody that's on a guardianship that's pregnant? Don't know. Them's the baby. What happens to the decisions? Nobody knows. And I'm pro-life. I am. I mean, I stood with, I don't want to say his name, but he's 1, 2, 3, 4 rows behind, in front of me. And we defended some abortion legislation on third trimesters for genetic reasons. And thankfully, that's now in state law, because it needed to be. But this concurrence misses this opportunity to be able to address this. My daughter's 21 years old. Excuse me. If she lost her favorite stuffed animal, she being consoled. Imagine making her carry a child to term.
Further discussion. Senator Pohl. Senator Pohl is recognized to speak on the concurrence.
Thank you, Madam President. Previously, I'd mentioned that the governor had called us here to help families, not strip away rights in a rushed and dangerous way. But it's exactly what we're doing. Senator Taylor, Senator Griffin, and Senator Yoder accurately pointed out the shortcomings of Senate Bill 2, and we heard excuses about how that's all we can do right now. We'll need time to figure out the impact of the well-intended proposals that didn't make the cut, but maybe better luck next time. That's apparently not the case for Senate Bill 1. This isn't a small increase or tax or regulation. This is a seismic shift in some of the most private and deeply held personal and civil rights we've held for a lifetime. Besides being a dangerous precedent of government overreach and intrusion into the most private parts of our personal lives, it sends a message. Indiana doesn't trust women and young girls. Indiana doesn't listen to experts sounding the alarm on serious medical and mental health issues. Indiana is too focused on stripping away rights to understand what happens to poor women who become pregnant, whether purposefully or forcefully. I mean, let's be honest. Those that are well off are going to have options. They'll be able to leave the state, but poor women, without the means to leave the state, without the means to, or without anybody to support them, they're stuck. Indiana does not care about what your plans are for yourself, your kids, or your family. And lastly, Indiana ignores the majority of the constituents. Kansas should absolutely be on everybody's mind. Numbers showing a 20-point blowout in one of the reddest states in middle America. There's no more clear indicator that that this is not about political identity. This is about civil rights, personal autonomy, and freedom of overreach into one of the most personal aspects of our lives, particularly in the lives of women. I think Senator Boots and Senator Becker, for their clear message, was very on point on that. Many of those that identify as pro-life understand that that can mean pro-life in their personal capacity. It's not a political identifier. This is something that cannot be gerrymandered. If it could be gerrymandered, Kansas would be debating the same ban right now. For many, it's a personal belief. Some could just not bring themselves to terminate their pregnancy and would likely raise their children with the same views. Those voting against this bill are not telling you that those views are wrong, that what your belief on the gift of life or the sanctity of life is wrong. That is vastly different than imposing those views on others and telling others what they can do with their body. That message is apparently falling on deaf ears, unfortunately, intentionally deaf ears. Many on both sides of the aisle offered a state referendum on what the constituents want. It was rejected, but I think we all know what the majority wants, and it's not forced government intrusion into doctors' offices. I know you can hear those brave women out in the hallway right now. I mean, it's impossible to not listen to them. To force birth onto somebody who's not ready, willing, or able will undoubtedly be a traumatic experience for many, but particularly those that are the most vulnerable. Those without the ability to take care of themselves, let alone another human being. We're forcing them to give birth. And when they simply can't care for the child, the response is, oh, just give up the child, give up that part of you, into the adoption and foster care system that is already wholly underfunded and unprepared for your child. That's not a knock on those that diligently work in the adoption and foster care system, who are currently making poverty wages, roughly $11 an hour, to care for foster children. That's a knock on us sitting in this room, sitting on a surplus and pushing through a bill that will further overload these systems, for trying to cram a seismic change that really should be substantively and thoroughly studied before being pushed through two bills in a truncated session. So let's take a bird's eye view of that option. Over the past couple of years, we had an all-time high demand in foster care. We drastically increased from 11,000 kids in foster care in 2006 to 20,000 in 2016, an increase of 74%. Now we're roughly at 27,000 kids currently in the foster care system. As of right now, Indiana has 10 foster placements per 1,000 children. That's the real world. This is the average of everyone's district in this room. These are some of the things that some districts will see and others won't, but it doesn't change the fact that that's what our state is, where the current state of our state is at.
And when DCS can't find a foster home, or if there's an emergency placement and there's no home available, the kiddo goes to the DCS office and literally sleeps on a cot on the floor for days to weeks at a time.
Of additional children. In committee, we heard testimony of Shannon Shoemaker of the Villages of Indiana, who presented information demonstrating that just 300 more children in the foster care system would be about $14 million more just to pay the foster parents. That's just 300. We're on a trajectory over time that continues to climb, and forcing birth on those would otherwise not give birth would only keep those rates on the rise. Now, I watched testimony from the witnesses who knew strong women and raised their children after having teenage pregnancies. Some after traumatic experiences. These were amazing stories of strength and perseverance. But it goes without saying, that's not data. That's not data for us to base a statewide mandate on forced birth. In fact, many folks in the state are already that have a medical emergency, one medical emergency away from being bankrupt. One simple mistake or an accident and they lose everything. To assume that such amazing stories of strength by a few are an acceptable support for a drastic and draconian policy change of forced birth is unacceptable and objectively dangerous. The average yearly cost for a center-based infant care is a little over $12,500 a year. Now, this isn't really a new development for most of us. But for those that are unaware, we're currently in a child care affordability crisis. Infant care costs more than both college and housing. Even the median family that earns $4,777 per month would have to spend 22% of their gross household income on a single child for infant care. For those making minimum wage, 85% would go to infant care for one child. Now, if we increase the amount of
mind you, minimum
child
wage
care
is still
vouchers to 4,000,
below $8 an
that'd be
hour.
about
So
$72 million.
yeah,
We're simply writing checks that we have no plan to cash. Now, the House made some changes, but the one that demonstrates arbitrary governance, I think the most, is the changes to the exceptions. 10 weeks to tell if you're pregnant if you've been raped. A little girl whose body's already changing so much, who may be terrified to tell somebody what happened to her, who may not even understand what it means to be pregnant in the first place. She now gets less time to figure out her body trauma from when this bill left this chamber. She's got to figure out her trauma, her support system, and ultimately the trajectory of her life with 2 fewer weeks.
yep.
And the Senate says nothing. We don't say no to that, we just concur. 12 weeks was wholly arbitrary, but no demonstrable rhyme or reason, no data-driven support, no reliance on scientific research or studies. 10 weeks is unreal and flat-out cruel. Testimony from the House demonstrated specific circumstances in which a child who gave birth didn't want her newborn baby. She just wanted the doll that she just received as a present. That's who the state is going to force to give birth. Business leaders, education institutions, young professionals, medical professionals, women who fought for their rights, their granddaughters who never thought they would lose those rights. The whole damn world, they have eyes on this chamber right now. They're thinking, are they going to send Indiana back into the dark ages where women are treated as second-class citizens, that women can't control their bodies? Or as one proponent of an all-out abortion ban put it, that they should feel shame for climbing the corporate ladder rather than raising a family they weren't ready for. What's the headline going to be? Time and time again in this short session, it was made abundantly clear that we're wholly unprepared for this, in this state and this legislature, for a seismic change of this matter. Dire, certain, and unimaginable circumstances and consequences are something to discuss later, but not before passing this terrible bill. This is just negligent and reckless in a way that this state hasn't seen before.
Meg on Twitter asks if I have seen the
true.
forbidden episode of Bluey.
The way that this
I've
looks
seen
is
every
control without
single
care for the
Bluey
consequences.
episode, probably
The
16
personal
times
beliefs
over.
of some over the personal autonomy of others. If we don't stop this now, we know the special interest groups that pushed for this legislation in the first place will undoubtedly return next session, continuing to push this legislature to up the penalties, to get rid of the expectations, to get rid of the contraception, to ignore science, to ignore the doctors, to punish the doctors, and anyone else not adhering to their beliefs. My colleagues and I will fight for those individuals to practice those beliefs, to hold those beliefs, to publicly display those beliefs, but I could never vote to allow the personal beliefs to take away the privacy, the rights, the health care, and the autonomy of others. I'm voting no, and I urge all of my colleagues to do the same.
Senator Young. Senator Young to question Senator Glick. Will you yield? Senator Young.
Thank you, Madam President, members of the Senate. I just have one question. It's on page 12. Here, do you want? I'll give it to you. Oh, okay. All right. All right.
Looks like they just muted their mics there for a second. Senator Glick's back and
Page 12, lines 1 through 4.
she's fun.
The reason I'm asking the question because I really don't know how this applies. The language simply says this article does not apply to in vitro fertilization, and this is regarding the abortion chapter of 1634(1). Does that language mean that none of the laws within the abortion laws apply to anybody that's had a baby that's conceived through the in vitro fertilization procedure?
It's in regard to the conception, and once the child is conceived and it's in utero, I think the law would apply. It doesn't apply to the actual fertilization process, as I understand it. So it doesn't go into the fertilized embryos, that sort of thing.
Okay. And I'll ask the second question, because I don't want to say anything that's incorrect. This is too important, and I want to make sure I got this right. Where does it restrict it only to the procedure itself and not to the rest of the abortion laws within 1634(1)?
This article,
Yeah, because it says it does not apply. And that's why I'm trying to figure out, if it doesn't apply to the abortion stand, there's nothing in the abortion stand that they could have. I just want to make sure. If you don't know the answer truly, I don't have a problem with that.
what's your point?
My point is, well, I'll do that in my speech. I just wanted to know what you knew on it. Permission to speak.
Senator Young's recognized to speak on the concurrence.
Thank you, Madam President. Members of the Senate. I know this is tough and sick. You can see my new trim self of losing all this weight and have to buy a new belt and stuff for my clothes because it's driven me crazy. It's taken a toll on me. Not as much as women would have to face in the situation they're going to be in, but it's taken a toll on all of us because we have strong, passionate feelings about this issue. It affects us because we care about our constituents and women who are going through this situation. And that's what we're doing today and why it affects all of us. But I'll tell you what, this bill went over here to the Criminal Law Committee. Had it come to our committee, I don't know what we would have done, but I can tell you this, we'd have probably studied it a little bit better and looked at the issues, and I thank all the members on our committee for the job that they do. They're very thoughtful. They look at all the different scenarios that could apply.
Oh, Megan, I just now
say,
saw your
well,
comment.
We do this, we do that. And I'll hold the bill for 1 or 2 weeks and not rush it through. But let me go through some of the problems with this bill. And for the life of me, we got 9 days left and we're being told we need to end this now. These are things that we can fix because I know that they're wrong and they're simple fixes. All we have to do tonight is just not concur. The bill's not dead. The language is not dead. It goes to a conference committee where we can hammer it out. We do this all the time on conference committees. So this is not a new issue with us. But this is the only time that we'll have, probably, to fix these issues. And why do we want to lose an opportunity that this may be the only time? I'll tell you what, I've heard stories here in my 35 years, and here's some of the stories I've heard. Just help me pass it over to the House over there so we can fix it. I hear that all the time. And what that language really means is simply this, for the most part. We're going to do what we need to have done and not what you want to have done. And we'll get it fixed that benefits us. Then the other thing I've heard is go ahead and pass the bill.
Hey, Corabora.
Please pass the bill.
You want to say hello?
Back in January and fix it.
Come here.
That's the
Look,
death knell.
you're up there.
I've never seen it done.
You see it right here?
I've never seen it done.
You can say hello in
And
the
the
microphone.
reason is we have the opportunity to fix it while we're here.
1, 2, 3.
It's our job.
Arrgh.
Right now. We got 9 days to go. So let me
Hello.
go through, and anybody can tell me
my
what
name
is
is-
wrong with anything that
My
I
name is Cora.
we couldn't
What's
fix
your
it
name?
now. There is no verification on the 10-week period. The law is pretty good.
We're talking to
the
people
doctor
on the
who
internet
says
right now.
that's doing the abortion has to
I
certify
did
it
the
in a letter
instruction
that
for
it's
you,
10
but
weeks.
Mommy doesn't know how to.
Oh,
If
you
it's
need the
11.
constructions?
Yeah,
They're on the
because
chair.
Who knows?
Right there.
Who knows it's 11 or
me and
10?
Mommy are gonna
Who
make
knows
this
if it's
divorce.
14
Okay,
or
love you.
10? Who
You can
knows
leave it
if it's
open.
19
That's fine.
or 10?
Okay.
The doctor is the only one who has that information. How do we know? No one has to verify it. They don't have another doctor will come in and verify that the gestation
Her and Mom are in the
child, that unborn child,
downstairs living
is
room
only
here
10
watching a
weeks,
movie together, so.
and they could commit a crime, but no one will ever know. It's in the file, but who looks at these files? I don't know. I don't know. I've never heard of it ever happening on an abortion doctor. And we got a great example of the one up in Allen County of all the babies that they killed, and no one knew. No one knew. Over 1,000, and no one knew. Yet we're supposed to know and trust somebody. They're going to verify the gestational age of 10 weeks. They won't. There's no verification that the woman was raped. We could require an examination. Now, a doctor, I'll tell you, they won't be able to tell you if the woman was raped, but they could verify the information based on the examination, and it appears to be, and that would be good enough for me. But there's no verification on that. There's no verification that the child is a product of incest. None whatsoever. And for a child under 16 for the crime of rape or incest, they have a 3-day reporting period. But if it turns out afterwards, the abortion, the 3 days notice is done because the baby is dead. The baby is dead. There's no requirement to maintain the DNA evidence. Now think about this. What if the woman later, and I know, and I'm not a woman, but I know this, they're under a lot of pressure. And they make decisions and not clearly thinking through it. Because when I'm under pressure, I make mistakes all the time. And I try not to do that while I'm under pressure. But they may make mistakes. But you know what? If they don't keep the DNA for the rape, what happens if a year or two the lady comes back and has the courage, has got over it, has got a control over her emotions, and said, this guy over here is the one that raped me? Well, where's the requirement that we keep the DNA evidence? And Senator Crider's done a lot of work in regard to the DNA evidence and on these rape kits, but we don't have any requirement that they keep this evidence so we can use it against this rapist. And who in this body wants that person to be free on our streets? Take the evidence, keep it so we can use it later if the woman changes her mind and prepared to testify. A minor has to the age of 31 to make a claim against somebody who have sexually assaulted her. Little kids may not be ready to go. We know they're not prepared. Senator Yoder says all the time about their minds not being developed. We've heard all the time here about how people are upset and it hurts them and it bothers them. Well, imagine that same pressure on a little girl. But 31 years later, she has enough courage to say, it was my uncle who raped me or committed incest. We no longer have any evidence in which to put that person behind bars. It's now that little girl's word, as she's older, against somebody else that said, I never did it. But if we had the DNA evidence, it wouldn't be a problem. And what we're saying, we can't fix it while we're here? Seriously? There's no requirement that the parent is even notified if it's a rape or incest. Now, I got some other evidence I'll show you in a little bit, but just because somebody says it is rape or incest, and I got the idea that most women probably aren't going to lie, but some do, and I've got the evidence here that does happen. But the parents don't even have to be notified. And what if she gets an abortion later and says, I feel so bad. My uncle never raped me. My father never raped me. My brother never raped me. A little baby's dead. And there wasn't even a crime that was committed. But we don't have to check it out. Now, if the little girl's life is in danger, I'd say do whatever you have to do to protect her life. But if it's not, maybe we ought to try to find out what's going on here first and see what has happened. You know, we get rid of the abortion clinics, and that's fine. I don't have any problem with that. I don't want to see them gone too. But all they were doing was doing the oral medication that any other doctor could give them. But we force the doctor to go to the hospital. They can't even do it in their office. So a doctor has to close down his office, to go to a hospital, to give the woman the oral medication.
And we're back.
That is simply done in his office. I don't know why we're doing that. That makes no sense to me. I have to wait long enough on my doctor. I don't want him to get up and have to go to a hospital that he has privileges at to give the woman the medicine that he could give to right there in his office. And there's no requirement like the COVID shot. I have to wait around 15 minutes. There's no requirement that the woman, after she takes the medication, has to wait there. They can leave. What's the purpose of doing this? I don't know. We can fix that. You know, what if the requirement we have, which is a great one, that at viability, we have to have a second doctor there to do everything they can within their power to protect that baby's life. That's at 20 weeks. What if this same doctor says it's only 19 weeks? And yet the baby's really at 21. Where's the second doctor come in? Who's there to protect that little baby's life? You know what? Nobody is checking that record. Why don't we have another doctor look at the gestational age of that baby and confirm it before it's done? And if it's over 20 weeks, they have to have a second doctor. If it's less than the second, they don't need it. But there's nobody that's checking. And you know what? The end result is that baby's going to be dead. It could have survived on its own. But there's no requirement because one person is doing it. We don't know if it's right or wrong. What if the doctor actually made a mistake? They are human beings, after all. I make mistakes. You guys point them out every time I do it. You know, on this issue about in vitro fertilization, you know, I'll tell you what, Senator Cook is probably a better attorney than I am. Senator Freeman's probably a better attorney than I am. And let me just say this, even Liz Brown's probably a better attorney than I am. I'm probably the worst attorney in this building. And Senator Pohl, you're better than I am too. But this language on page 12, this article does not apply to in vitro fertilization. None of the abortion laws, that's where they are in 1634-1, none of the laws apply to that. You could go 8 months, 6 days, 23 hours and have an abortion because nothing in Title 16, 34-1 applies to the procedure of in vitro fertilization. We can fix that too. Why are we going to allow this to happen? Because you have some procedure, none of the laws apply to you, but they apply to somebody else? Well, how is that even fair? Why is that even right? Why are we even doing it when we have 9 days in which to change it and make it right? And that is our job. You know, a doctor for an unlawful abortion, and I don't know why we're doing this at all. A doctor can't be charged with feticide or murder of the mother or voluntary manslaughter. Why is it that we would want a doctor who's going to commit a crime and let him go scot-free because, oh, doctors won't come here? Doctors will leave here? Well, wait a minute. Why do I want a doctor that's going to violate the law? Why do I want a doctor who's going to violate the law? And why does he get a pass on breaking the law? And we have Senator Freeman used to be a road deputy. And Senator Kreider is a law enforcement officer. Can you imagine that they're out there on their duty? They put their lives on the line. They find somebody committed a crime and arrest them. And the law says, oh, wait a minute. Because they're a doctor, they don't get charged with those things. What kind of law is that we would do that? They would let somebody break our laws just because they're a doctor? That makes no sense to me. But you know what I know? We have time to correct that. We have 9 days to fix that. Forced abortion. That's very serious. It usually comes from trafficking people. And I know Senator Kreider's working a lot on this one too. He's done a great job. And I let him carry a lot of bills in the committee on these issues because they're important.
Invasive government's right. I mean, at the end of the day, it's the one thing I keep on going back to this is just separation of church and state, and it's it just does not.
Section of the law dealing with coerced abortion. Guess what his penalty is, or her penalty? Anybody know? It's a Class A infraction. Anywhere from $1 to $10,000, it's not even a crime. It's not a criminal act. And we have a doctor who's going to violate it, and all they get is an infraction. That makes no sense to me. Here are some of the other laws that doctors will not be charged with. And I don't know anybody in this room would think this is right. They can't be charged with murder if they commit a crime on the abortions, voluntary manslaughter, involuntary manslaughter, feticide, and serious bodily injury from a battery. Why do we think that's okay for them to break the law and do that? I'll tell you what, if I hit somebody, my prosecutor right here in Marion County would have me charged, indicted, and in trial. I can tell you that right now. I wouldn't get by with it. Why do we let a doctor get by with it? That makes no sense. Now, I know this issue is tough. It's tough for all of us, no matter what side we're on. But this idea that we can take away the doctor's license will solve all our problems. Well, let me tell you, I do a lot of research. I read a lot of things. And here's the research on Indiana doctors. It was conducted from 1975 to 2015 by two individuals with the name of Jean Liu, not Jean Liu, but Jean Liu, and David Hyman. It was conducted by, what was it here? I think it's, well, for whatever, it came from a university out in the East Coast. And it was published in September the 13th of 2021, so it was recent. They looked at everything from 1975 to 2015 on all the disciplinary actions against the medical doctor in the state of Indiana. Of all the violations that doctors have had and was brought before the Medical Licensing Board, guess how many doctors was even disciplined? And I'm not talking about was their license revoked. How many were even disciplined? Anybody know? 1.2%. And you think because we have a licensing requirement in here, they're going to lose their license? Why did we have, Senator Sandlin had the bill on this, on the fertility doctor. Why did he get by so long?
We're going to try to throw TikTok into the live stream here, too. That'll be a lot of fun.
Vigo. Are you telling me a doctor, all these doctors, of all the ones that ever had charges brought against them, only 1.2% were ever disciplined? That makes no sense to me whatsoever. You know, Senator Lannon, I started to say something the other day, and we're friends, but when you said I implied that I didn't have the right to vote because I'm not a woman. Well, in my district, over half my district is made up of women. I think they're pretty smart because they voted for me. And of those women that was in my district, you know, a plurality of the women in my district were pro-life. And the thing I thought about is this. I've never hidden my position from anybody, ever. And they ask me this question, I'm a stand-up person. I'll tell you where I am. I'll never back down. I'll never apologize for my beliefs and my principles. But I know this. My district knows what my principles are. And they voted for me based on those principles and knowing what those are. And they asked me to come here and speak for them. And that's what I'm doing. I have every right to speak for the women of my district. Just because I'm male doesn't make any difference. They elected me to speak for them, and then I'm proud to be here speaking for those women who are pro-life in my district, which is over a plurality. You know, the other thing that we heard, and I don't have anything against Senator Paul on this, but I am offended that people would think that because of our stance, that we're allowing a rapist to pick the mother of their child. We're not doing that at all. But if we can't find out who the rapist is to put him in jail, we're letting every woman down, because this is the problem. Rapists don't quit. And we know about 98% of these people who do these type of crimes will never be rehabilitated. And they'll be right back out in the street unless we can find a way to stop them. Your mother, your sister, your wife, your cousins can all be raped by the same perpetrator unless we have the evidence or have somebody with courage to come forward. They will remain on the street harming our citizens. Our job is to protect our citizens. We have every right to do it, and we should do that. But we don't have any mechanism in this bill to do that. The only mechanism we had that we put in this bill to protect the public was taken out by the House, the non-compliant prosecutor. I know you guys don't like it. I understand. I got that.
Yeah, that's disgusting,
But if we
Megan.
don't have somebody who's going to prosecute these crimes and find out who they are, we're hurting a lot of people. We're hurting a whole lot of people. But we don't have to. And you know why? We have 9 days. This doesn't go away. It doesn't kill it. It's just another conference committee report. But is that what we want to be known for? The final thing I'll just say, this bill, I'll tell you what, I didn't like the Senate bill, but the Senate bill was much better than this piece of paper.
Oh, say it. Come
I don't
on.
know why anybody would be in favor of this. It's horrible. It's horrible. It's filled with holes. And now, listen, I don't want you to take my word for it. Senator Taylor never does. I always have to have him go talk to Andy Hedges. And then he believes it. I tell him the very same thing. He doesn't believe me. He hears the very same words I say, and he believes Andy Hedges. I'm just telling you, I don't care who you check with. Anybody wants to check this paper and what I said, I've already had it checked by a renowned national authority on abortion laws. I had Andy Hedges also check all this and verify it. Everything I've said here tonight has been verified by people other than myself. People other than myself. And the final thing before I just make a concluding statement. I was offended the other day when the Jewish Community Relations Council said that I was opposed to their religious beliefs and that I should immediately issue an apology. I have no idea what they're talking about. I have no idea who's running that group. But I can tell you this. I went back and reviewed the tape. I never even mentioned Jewish religion in any of my remarks. Now, they were mentioned by a couple of members over here, but it never came from me. And you all know what I said. I specifically did not bring up religion because I didn't want that to be a part of this debate. They are wrong. And they ought to stand up if they have any character at all and make a public apology to me because I never said anything about their religious views. Now,
Oh my goodness. Just
we're not going to put something in the law based on our religion that says if you have commit adultery or a homosexual that you die for it. That is grotesque. I would never be in favor of that. They cut off people's hands for theft.
Yes, apparently he
We're
is.
not going to put that in our law. They do all kinds of things. They're barbaric. And yes, they should not be a part of our law. But I never talked about the abortion issue, about the religions, the Jewish people and their religious beliefs. I would never do it. They have every right to what they believe in on that regard. And they disagree with us, and I disagree with them. But that's part of the debate. So I'll just close with this. My job is this. To protect every beating heart, whether it's born or unborn. That's my job. That's your job as well. That's why we're here. We make decisions. And I just can't let these babies die without fighting. You know, when I was a kid, I never gave up. I was athletic. I was very aggressive. I never quit. And the only time I did quit was when time ran out. That's the only time I ever quit. I know this, time is not out. Time is not out for us to make the corrections in the bill and make it better, to help all our citizens. At least be fair in the way we apply this law, to ensure that when little girls are raped or have incest, that we have the evidence so we can convict the person later on. That's all I'm after, is to make sure we have the ability to safeguard our citizens. All it takes, and I don't know if this is Thomas Jefferson or President Jackson, but one of them, because they're applied to both of them. One person with courage equals a majority. One person with courage equals a majority. I hope we have somebody with courage today that will do the right thing. It'll give us the opportunity to fix this in conference committee and make it a great bill that we can all live with, even though we may not agree with every part of it. But this idea that we can save lives from this, there is no guarantee.
All right, looks like we're now live on Instagram too.
There's no indication
Good
in any
times.
study
Good times,
I've looked
everyone.
for 'em that we will save one. If they need an abortion or want an abortion, they're going to go get it. The only thing we've done is we made sure it didn't happen in this state. That's all we've done. The same amount of babies will probably die. They just won't be here. And think about Kentucky. And think about Ohio, where they have stricter laws than we do. Our actually may go up because they'll come to Indiana to get those abortions. They'll come use this law on rape and incest to get the abortion. And so our numbers could go up. It's incredible to me that that's the way we look at things. It's okay if they die in another state but not here. I don't want them to die in any state. I don't want to be a state that says we're going to take a little baby's life away because they were born in Indiana. If some other state's going to do it, let them do it. My conscience will be clear. But I don't want it to be done in my state. And so all I ask for anybody, I've never put on pressure on anybody. I tried to give everybody information to make a knowledgeable decision. It's just vote your conscience. Do what you think is right. But I need somebody in this room, that one person, who will stand up and be one person with courage to make that majority. And with you, I hope we do the right thing. Thank you.
Further discussion. Senator Bohacek. Senator Bohacek to question Senator Glick. Do you yield? Senator Bohacek.
Thank you, Madam President. Members of the Senate, sorry, when I left last time I didn't excuse myself. Senator Glick, is there any provisions in this bill for moms that are under guardianship?
Yeah, there's a provision in here to the courts. You can go to the courts for assistance, as you can anytime someone lacks capacity.
But there's nothing there to extend that 10-week window, right?
No, it's up to the court.
It's up to the court. So they would have to petition the court in order to ask for the 10-week window to be extended.
You would have to petition the court to have any kind of assistance in that.
How long does that take to happen usually?
Usually those are moved, if there are emergent circumstances, they would be advanced on the docket.
Can somebody that's under guardianship sign a fee agreement with a lawyer? So
Do what?
Can somebody that's under guardianship, they would require their guardian to actually sign the fee agreement with the lawyer to actually move that forward, or no?
If they're under a guardianship, normally their guardian would act for them. They could do anything for them that they could do for themselves. The guardian could act.
What would happen to a child? I mean, if the child's born and the person is under guardianship, is it up to the guardian to determine what happens to the child, whether it stays with mom or goes?
It would depend on the circumstances. If it was an incest, it would have there would be obviously an investigation of those circumstances. If it was a rape, if it was, it depends on the circumstances.
So if it was a rape, would it, because my situation with this kind of situation. So if it was a rape, who would determine where the child goes? Would it be the guardian that would determine it, or who would?
I would say the guardian certainly would have something to do with it, but there are provisions in the law for people who don't have capacity. If a person rapes an individual who lacks capacity, there are provisions in the law to protect those individuals.
What if the person that had,
Teddy says, hey.
If you have an IQ sub 70, you're determined to be mentally retarded. What would the person wanted to keep the child?
Okay.
Could they, or would there be a hearing to determine if they had?
I think there'd be a hearing in most cases, or the guardianship certainly would have input on as whether or not, if the individual lacks capacity and has a guardian appointed for them, they're probably going to have a difficult time to establish they have the requisite capacity to care for an infant.
All right, thanks.
Further discussion. Senator Kadura. Senator Kadura is recognized to speak on the motion to concur.
They're still going loud and strong out there in
members of the Senate.
the hallways.
Each one of my colleagues has the right to speak their mind. Each one of my colleagues was elected by their constituency to represent their beliefs and their principles. But I reject the idea that any political party or any legislator holds monopoly on moral righteousness. I reject the idea that someone can question the integrity of any legislator, of where they stand on this issue, especially when a process that negotiates a bill between the Senate and the House plays God and changes and negotiates the time frame from 8 weeks to 12 weeks back to 10 weeks. I don't think God sent revelations over the last 7 days to change the law of when is the time for a girl, a young girl who was raped, to understand her emotional and psychological distress of being raped at the age of 10 or 11 or 12 or 13 or 14 or 15. When I read the Declaration of Independence, that these truths are evident, I think some of us
You'll like that
took some of the
comment.
words literally, that all men, all men are
Right?
equal, and
Right, Teddy?
completely and literally took the argument that women do not exist. I recall when 17,000 Hoosiers died because of COVID, no one signed a letter to the governor saying, send us back to a special session so that we can protect Hoosiers. I recall that, matter of fact, what we did in this session, we went after the Republican governor to limit his powers because some people oppose the role of departments of public health in the state of Indiana, and then we question why Indiana ranks in the bottom 10 nationwide on public health, on infant mortality, and maternal mortality. We heard a lot of preaching about pro-life, and I respect the sanctity of life. And yes, I'm a Democrat, and I celebrate life. But don't tell me that it's a pro-life policy when for 2 weeks the minority agonized over trying to improve the health and the well-being of Hoosier women by supporting $250 million for their mental health, by supporting $250 million for public health, by supporting $250 million for infant and maternal health. When we start placing a price, a monetary price, on the health of women, that is not pro-life. Based on our laws, to all of those who I respect in this chamber, every single legislator with no exception, I respect you as my colleagues. I respect your passion. I respect your principles. But I have my right to fiercely disagree with you. So hear me out. When a gun in Indiana does not require a permit, but a woman needs a permit to be told what to do with her body.
There it is.
Maybe you don't see that argument. As a person who lost a loved one to gun violence, I do see that argument. A killing machine does not require a permit in Indiana, but moms who are producing kids for this society are treated like objects who need permits. It is offensive. The Bill of Rights, and this is not a lecture on history, but the Bill of Rights was added to amend the Constitution not to restrict people, not to take power away from people, but to tell government, to prevent government from the misconstruction and the abuse of power. Please, when you use words such as, it is the will of the majority for this bill to pass, let me push back for a second. Please do not be under any ambiguous understanding that this is not the will of Hoosiers. I preached on this podium, from this podium, and I voted against the gerrymandered maps that gave the supermajority more influence than what the actual votes in Indiana require you to have. I opposed it from a principled position. And if I was on your side, I would oppose gerrymandering. So please don't tell me that the will of the majority requires to restrict reproductive rights for Hoosiers, Indiana, just because 26 individuals in this chamber made it happen, made the law pass to go to the House so that it can impact half of our population as a beginning, but it will impact every young child, whether boy or girl, whether grown-up man or woman.
He's a great public speaker. Fantastic.
I've never seen the sense of urgency for the General Assembly to come back here to call for a special session, or for the governor to call for a special session to deal with crises confronting Hoosiers. I spoke with so many Republicans beyond what I can count, and many of them told me that they wish to stay anonymous to protect their professional careers. Some of them worked in this chamber for over 15 years for Republican senators who reached out and said, I will be changing my voting record because my own party left me. I received emails, text messages, and calls from Mitch Daniels staffers and Mike Pence staffers who said, my party left me. This is not the Republican Party that I know. I received messages telling me this is a civil war within the Republican Party between rural Republicans and urban and suburban Republicans, and women are being held hostage in this. And these letters didn't come from Democrats. They came from Republicans. No citizen should be held hostage to political infight between any political party, whether Democrats or Republicans. I fully disagree with my colleague Mike Young. I respect him as a colleague. I'm on the extreme opposite of his arguments. His position, his policy position, is an extreme policy position. But I wholeheartedly agree with him. Why rush through a process that strips rights away from people? Why?
Considering the special session was intended to give money back to Hoosiers.
Policy, for those who truly care about how government actually functions, not just passing laws. For those who worked on a local level, on a state level, who understand it's not a switch that you turn on or off. Republican legislators, senators serving in this chamber today, and Republican representatives in the House publicly and privately said, we are not ready for this law to be implemented. We are not ready. Indiana's not ready. Indiana is ill-equipped to handle existing kids.
Yeah, that's no joke. When you got kids,
Point of rushing a bill.
when you've got kids sleeping on the
We
DCS
spoke about
floor.
religion in this chamber.
My gosh.
What happened to the protection of people's civil liberties and freedom to practice their faith? Senator Phil Boots, last time I checked, was not a Democrat. And for him to say it's a small number of legislators who subscribe to one faith, who want to impose their faith views on others, didn't come from a Democrat. It came from a Republican. I served on committees my dear respected friend, Senator Perfect, many committees, especially the labor and pensions, when we always heard good arguments, let government stay away from people or create barriers for people. Government is at its best when it's small and does not interfere with the people's lives. So what happened to that? Where's the contradiction? Can't we see the contradiction in that? My message today in closing, first is to you, my colleagues. It is easy in the heat of the moment to place political priority over policy priorities. And I also heard that from my Republican colleagues. That the political urgency for a party that campaigned for 50 years on pro-life, we just cannot leave these 2 weeks without passing something. And there's an upcoming election. These are words I heard from my Republican colleagues. And we have to demonstrate to those who voted for us for 50 years that we've been fighting for them, and we cannot go back to our districts empty-handed. That's why we have to pass something. And I guarantee you, and watch my words, come January, there will be more anti-abortion bills introduced in this session. And comes the year after, and the year after, and the year after, because of gerrymandering, you will have more legislators or candidates running for districts trying to run an extreme to criminalize physicians and maybe go all the way to level 1 felony or even the death penalty for physicians for providing reproductive care. Because they might think that you are not strict enough. They might think that you are too liberal. So when do we say that the interest of our people become above and more important than the interest of a political party? When does it become important for all of us to say that we will serve the interest of Hoosiers before the interest of a political party? To all, specifically, to all Hoosiers, but specifically to all young girls, like my 2 daughters. To all Hoosier women, those who shed tears over the last 2 weeks and the last few months in fear, those who lost hope, those who lost sleep, those who lost confidence that their government works for them, to those who gave up on their elected officials because they feel they don't represent them. Please hear me out. If this legislation passes, it will be a setback. But we will never give up. We will never give hope. We will fight with courageousness to change public policy in a civil manner, in a respectful manner, to restore these rights. I remember Dr. King, before he was assassinated, when his people were persecuted and deprived their civil liberties, he delivered one of the most hopeful speeches, where he said, "We have difficult days ahead." And believe me, we will have difficult days, even those who are going to support this bill. When you see how healthcare metrics are going to turn in Indiana, please remember that you voted for this bill. Dr. King said, we have difficult days ahead. And I might not be there with you, but I've made it to the mountaintop, and I've looked over, and I've seen the promised land. And we as people will make it to the promised land. And Hoosier woman, I tell you, we hurt with you, we feel your pain, we listen to you, we will never yield fighting for your rights, because you should be treated as an equal citizen, not as a second-class citizen. And with hope, and with love, and with compassion, we will restore your rights, and I will oppose this legislation.
Further discussion.
Fantastic.
Senator Taylor. Senator Taylor is recognized to speak on the motion to concur.
Thank you, Madam President, members of the Senate. It's not without a little humility that I stand here today to actually discuss this issue that, for all intents and purposes, it's not something that, quite frankly, I think I have the right to be standing here talking about. And some
cool.
people might be offended by that, but I think it speaks for itself that I'll never have to make that decision for myself. But there are some things related to Senate Bill 1 that I think even the people who might not agree with me would agree on this. If you are right to life or pro-life, this bill ain't good for you. You put your vote up as a green yes on this, and I don't know how you call yourself right to life. For those of us who might consider ourselves pro-choice, when you put your vote up for this, if you do that, I don't know how you do it. So then you kind of back up and you wonder why we even have the bill in front of us. I have to admit, I've been struggling, questioning my friend who's the author of the bill, trying to figure out where authorship. Here's the interesting piece. Nobody's taking credit for this legislation. Not one time have we asked who came up with this language. It's always, well, somebody else did it or somebody. If it's such a good piece of legislation, take ownership of it and say, I did it. But I have figured out something, and this is where I'm going to focus my comment. We should all be scared. See, because I want to go back to the Supreme Court making this decision to kick these abortion rights back to the states. See, the decision under the Roe case did not force Indiana to accept abortion as a law. It didn't do that at all. What it did is it established through scientific information, testimony from witnesses, when viability was. And then it said, now, states, based on this viability, go back and make your laws. So you had states like Indiana that might have 20 weeks. You had states that might be a little bit less conservative, that might have 22 to 24 weeks. But they never said, they never said, prior decisions were bad, we're just going to give you guidance. And here's where the rubber meets the roads, folks. Under this decision, the Supreme Court of this country took away a constitutional right from women and said, we're not just going to take it away, we're going to allow different states to take it away. Depending on where you live, you may or may not have a right to your own bodily autonomy. That's what they said. But here's the important thing. Do you think that's where it's going to stop? What if the Supreme Court said, in the case of Plessy versus Ferguson, that the Supreme Court made a bad decision? That separate but equal is not fair in the United States of America. And because they made that decision, we're going to kick it back to the states to have their own hodgepodge of laws. Some people grimace when I say that because that was racially motivated. But I'm going to give you something else that we all might understand.
You said we can watch
What if
silly
Justice
doggy videos and silly kitty
Alito, in his
videos and
decision
silly.
Look, Teddy's
for gun
Teddy's
rights
on the
and interpreting the,
TV.
the Constitution to
just
say
saw
that
that we
every
can watch
person has
silly
a right
kitty
to
videos,
bear
silly
arms,
doggy
which was
videos,
a
and
constitutional.
Silly duck
He
videos.
said it.
Yeah.
Can you
For
watch
those
us
of us who
upstairs?
are
Upstairs here in a little bit, yeah.
carrying, permit
I
carrying,
promise.
if you're a member of the NRA,
You want to sit on my
what
lap?
if
Teddy's
the
on my
Supreme
lap.
Court determines
Can I say
that
hi on the
constitutional right
microphone?
What?
that Supreme
Say
Court
hi on
case
the
gave you
microphone.
was the wrong decision?
What'd you say? What'd you say, silly monkey?
Can you say hi in the microphone?
Oh, you want to say hi in the microphone? Yes, you can, baby.
Hi.
I think Teddy wants to say hi too.
Okay, wait. Put him in the microphone.
Put him in the microphone. Here you go, Teddy. What do you want to say? He's a little shy. That's okay, though. Yeah.
Daddy has a dog named Teddy.
Yep. That's right. Oh, look. Megan says hello to you. You see that right there? She said, hi, Cora. See? H-I. What's that spell?
Megan.
Hi. No, this says Megan. M-E-G-A-N.
Megan.
Megan. That's right. Good job. That's not Aunt Megan, though.
Yeah, just Megan. It's cute like Megan. And Megan.
Yeah. Hey, it's way past your bedtime. You had movie night.
Can we go upstairs
Hey,
and watch
I have a good idea.
videos?
Oh, look. Now, Stephanie says hello. What the what?
Hi. Can I
You
say
want to say hi in the microphone? Go say hello. Go say hello.
hi, Stephanie.
Oh, that's funny.
And hi, Megan. Can we go upstairs and watch?
We're
the
going to watch them in the
videos?
morning, baby.
No. Please.
Hey, mommy's telling you to go upstairs. Go, go, go.
Daddy said we can watch silly kitty videos and silly doggy videos and silly videos.
I know, but you got to watch a movie and 2 TV shows.
She is not happy that it is bedtime. That is for sure. Oh, boy. Oh, my. Looks like our live stream may have paused. Sorry, everyone. Oh, there it goes.
Are we going to come back to this body?
It seems like it's because I took out my headphones. We're going to have to refresh that. Might have to end that browser and bring it back up. We're going to close that for right now. And I just want to tell everyone, thank you so much for tuning in. It really means a lot to me. It's our first time doing this. I hope to be doing this a lot more. It's just a great way to connect with constituents, a great way to get my name out there as a candidate, a first-time candidate for office. I think it's important that to know that I'm not accepting any corporate PAC donations whatsoever. Every single bit of donations to my campaign are from individual citizens from across the state. It's 100% grassroots. I have no desire to be a bought-off politician. So that's a little bit about the campaign. We're going back into the live stream here.
Texas did this. Actually, Texas did this, and they did
There
it
we go.
through
We're
enacting through an automatic thing. You know what what do you think abortions went down in that state? This is amazing to me. For those of us who want to support this legislation because you think it's going to protect life, 10%. But you know what they did in one of the school districts that cut down abortions almost 50%? They opened up sex education. They gave the children prophylactics and contraceptives. They taught women on how to make sure that their body is ready for childbirth. We don't have to fight this battle amongst ourselves. We know what we can do. Don't destroy our relationships with this legislation. Don't hurt yourself. Don't hurt your constituents. And I ask you to consider, it wasn't our fault what the Supreme Court did, but it is our fault if we pass this legislation.
Further discussion, Senator Yoder. Senator Yoder is recognized to speak on the motion to concur.
Thank you to everyone who has donated to the campaign. I'm going to not talk for a minute because Shelley's an amazing public speaker and we want to listen to Shelley.
Get here, and I will give you a very abbreviated version. In 2016, we learned that you can grab a woman's privates and she gets silenced, but he becomes president. In 2018, we learn of a non-consensual assault and she gets threatened and he gets confirmed onto the country's highest court. And today, we are considering if a rape victim has the right to abortion care, and she only gets 10 weeks, and the rapist might get a child. It is hard for me to articulate how it feels to stand before you in this chamber again and plead with you to let my daughters remain full people, to let your daughters, wives, and the people you serve, the people standing on the other side of that glass, live their lives with liberty, with freedom, with full, unapologetic humanity. We shouldn't have to ask for control over our own bodies. Our autonomy should never be in doubt. But here we are, again. Senate Bill 1 is an atrocious piece of legislation. At its core, it strips women of the fundamental right to control their own body and constitutes a massive overreach into private health care decisions. This is state-mandated pregnancy. State-mandated pregnancy. There is no laws on the books in Indiana saying you have to get an abortion if you don't want one. But we are about to enact a law that forces women to stay pregnant and to give birth. There are no words to describe that hypocrisy, and no speeches can capture that despair. When we call it a total ban, you correct us, and you say there are exceptions. And technically, there are, but not really. At every turn, we are treating all women who get abortions, even little girls who are victims of rape and incest, as criminals. 10 weeks is barely enough time for a woman to know she is pregnant and to schedule an appointment. 10 weeks is certainly not enough time for a young girl whose period is still irregular to know she is pregnant, to understand rape, and then to find time to find a compassionate care provider to schedule an appointment. Little girls who are just figuring out how their bodies work will be forced into pregnancy, forced to carry the baby of their rapist, their stepfather, their grandfather, because the Indiana legislature is making it so. There's no scientific reason for 10 weeks. It's not a trimester cutoff. It's not viability. It's not current law. This is a number that sounded merciful enough for Republicans to message on, but could still force as many people as possible to give births to babies made in blood and violence. Even abortions that are legal, we are treating as criminal acts. As proposed, this bill strips licensure for freestanding regulated abortion clinics. Why? To make abortions harder to access. This bill strips criminal penalties for doctors, but still requires them to lose their licensure for their livelihood if they perform an illegal abortion. Why? To make them second-guess their care and themselves, even decisions necessary to save a woman's life. Over the past 2 weeks, we've witnessed a disturbing pattern. Despite its unwavering, ego-driven intent to pass this drastically unpopular forced birth anti-freedom legislation, this body routinely failed to advance the many amendments that this side of the aisle have proposed to ensure women have access to housing, food, basic goods during and after their forced pregnancy. One of the most disturbing ones to me has been the failures in the House and Senate to pass legislation to protect the access to contraception in Indiana state law, and the dogmatic defense of resource pregnancy centers. Every single one of us in the chamber knows that abstinence-only counseling and policy isn't working and isn't realistic, although we won't say it out loud. SB 1 is not about reducing the number of abortions. If that's true, you would have voted to protect contraception. You would have voted to expand access to birth control. You would have mandated sex education years ago. You would fully and firmly advocate for places like Planned Parenthood, which provides comprehensive health and family services and planning resources. But we didn't. You didn't. So what does that say? I've said it before, but it bears repeating, because it's about control. It's about power, it's about fear, it's about sending an implicit but undeniable message to Hoosier women that your value is in your ability to get pregnant and be controlled by men.
Man.
The bill's House committee, it was assigned to courts and criminal code, and that says all you need to know about it. It's not compassionate. It's not pro-life. It's pro-punishment. Punishment of women who dare to live as freely as men. Punishment of the healthcare workers who would dare to provide care for them. Punishment of prosecutors who base their idea of a crime on legal precedent rather than their personal beliefs. Here's the truth, plain and simple. A world with access to abortion is the only world where there can possibly be equality. Otherwise, women and women only bear the consequences of this draconian piece of legislation. In the cases of rape and incest, many girls will bear the consequences of a decision made by someone else and forced upon them. That is not justice. That is not liberty. It's not close to either. I want to believe we're more compassionate than forcing victims of rape and incest to give birth to their attacker's baby. I want to believe we have the humility to understand that we will never be able to legislate a blanket solution for this issue. I want to believe we have the grace and mercy not to pass this law. We heard the author of the bill say that this bill forces pregnancy and forces birth. That forced pregnancy is the lesser of two evils. Who are we? We are ranking rape and incest of a child? To those in this chamber who have given birth, remember how you felt in the months of anticipation leading up to that labor. Not just the physical aches and pains, but the fear, the panic, all the times you laid awake and wondering how you would get through it. And that's how I felt at 34. Imagine this at 9 years old. Imagine this at 15 years old. In a state with the third highest mortality rate, dismal availability of specialized OBGYN care, and no real pregnancy accommodations, there's no reason to believe a forced pregnancy is the lesser of two evils. For some women, this becomes a death sentence. We've heard a lot of talk about God recently, about carrying out God's will, about giving account of our lives before God. And if that's true, I say, okay, fine. Let God judge me. Let God judge us for our choices at the end. But not you, not the people sitting in this chamber. We are not judge, jury, and executioner. It's not yours to forgive me. And I refuse to believe any God who would want a woman to carry her attacker's child. That God would believe that mercy for rape and incest victims should not expire at 10 weeks. And I refuse to believe any God would want us to decide who is worthy of mercy. Our job on this earth is to love each other, to help each other, to make our way in this world with all the grace and dignity and freedom with which we were bestowed. That is the principle that should guide our governance, that should guide how we serve Hoosiers. It is ludicrous that this is where we're going to decide where government needs to get involved in people's life, that Hoosiers on their own need to find housing and food and childcare and good jobs and a life worth living. But this is going to be your line in the sand here. Forced birth is the moral imperative, but pregnancy accommodations, those will be optional. We are not arbiters of God's will. We are elected representatives, and our job is not to pass a moral judgment on a subject so dependent on individual faith, circumstances, and conscience. Our job is to represent the people we serve, which we're doing a damn poor job of right now.
Well, yeah, and considering
that Hoosiers want this legislation to be defeated. We know what this bill means, and we know what Hoosiers want. We know that this bill will drive healthcare workers away. We know it will drive Hoosiers out of this state. And we know that this bill will kill women. And I'm begging you, please, let's legislate this on the basis of what we know, rather than how we feel. Let's talk in concrete terms about what your yes vote means. A yes vote is a signal to doctors that we don't care about their medical expertise. A yes vote is a vote for the government to insert itself into a woman's most personal, most private healthcare decisions. A yes vote for the men in this chamber is a vote that says a woman is less than you. Less free, less autonomous, less human. I consider what your yes vote means, and I hope you consider it strongly. And I hope you keep Kansas in the back of your mind, as well as the reasons you came to serve in this body, because your voters will see your yes vote, your voters will remember, and your voters will hold you accountable. Hold us all accountable. Lastly, and most importantly, to the women who sit here, to the women watching, to the women we work with, and to the women sitting with the media and those who are standing on the other side of that glass. I am so deeply sorry. I'm sorry you have to be here. And I'm sorry you have to carry the burden of this. I'm sorry we're fighting an old fight again, and that we've ignored your voices as we take away your rights. Today, a yes vote will be a setback, 50 years. Setback, but not defeated. Defeat is not an option. Defeat is not in a woman's vocabulary. History knows we will triumph. If it takes 50 years, 100, or 200 years, we will keep going. And Senate Democrats stand with you, ready to defend your rights, ready to guard against government overreach, and ready to ensure that all people are able to live the lives they want to live, lives of liberty and freedom, and we will not go back. A no vote is a vote for liberty, for freedom, for recognizing a woman's autonomy. Please vote no.
Further discussion, Senator Brown. Senator Brown is recognized to speak on the motion to concur.
Thank you, Madam President. Distinguished members of the Senate. This bill is the culmination of so many hard-fought battles in the defense of life in the womb. Those of us who have advocated for the laws we currently have always pushed for better health care for both mothers and babies. But until we all recognize the humanity of every baby in the womb, we have a long way to go. To all the doctors, particularly the OBGYNs who testified in favor of more abortion access, I can only say, do your job. That is, follow your training to take care of two patients, the mother and the baby. Use the resources of your hospital system and this state to offer women total care for themselves and their baby. To the women who have bemoaned the fact that their daughters will have less health care than they do, I say, I hope my daughters and granddaughters recognize that to bring a life into the world is a gift. It is the ultimate unselfish act, an act that is exponentially returned with love. Don't we want a society that values all human beings?
Yeah, watching
Our sons and grandsons.
watching her during the conference committees was
taught them
ungodly painful.
that they have no responsibility for their actions unless the mom wants to keep the baby. We've conveyed that men get no say in preventing a violent choice. The future must include raising responsible men to be responsible fathers. Fathers are as important to the life of that child as a mother. Our poverty and crime statistics bear that out. But a culture reliant on abortion has absolved men of responsibility and allowed women to be abandoned, left alone without the support she needs. We've done this under the guise of choice. That if she only chooses to end life in her womb, then she won't need a net of support around her. What a terrible choice to lay on a woman. Reproductive health care is the ultimate oxymoron. Many of my colleagues in this chamber have voted against making sure a woman receives all the information she needs in a safe health care setting. Many have said they are pro-life, yet they want to allow abortion for others. I believe my colleagues would rise to the occasion if a pregnant family member came to them and asked for help. Why don't we ensure that all Hoosier women have the support system that our own families can provide? so a woman doesn't have to choose between bringing a child into this world or paying her rent or keeping a job. I know some of my colleagues here have been warriors for these babies, and women are disappointed because we won't save every baby from an untimely death. I too am heartbroken because we all believe that every life matters. But I know that what we are doing today is just the beginning. Our actions today will save so many lives. When we convene in January, babies saved by this law we passed tonight will be far into the development in their mother's womb, with hair in their heads and kicking playfully as they respond to their mother's voice. We will always have more work to do because we need to make it unimaginable to end an unborn baby's life. As we ensure that women have every resource and support they need to bring the ultimate gift of a beautiful baby into this world, our job is not done, and the next phase of our work is just beginning. We need to empower women and protect life. We can do this by passing this bill and providing the necessary services that support mothers and their babies. Through our actions and support, women will know that we love them both. Please support this bill.
Further discussion. Senator Glick, would you like to close?
Here we go.
Madam President, members of the Senate, I appreciate the passion, the emotion we've seen tonight, the views of all the members of this chamber. I remind you that this is a part of two bills, Senate Bill 1, Senate Bill 2, provides a number, as a package, a number of different assistant measures. Not only do we go into these decisions, which we have concentrated on in Senate Bill 1, but we've provided some financial mechanism to assist these people, these women who have children. Those of us who sat through over 8 hours of testimony and rules, I sat through the hearings over in the House. Throughout them, we had person after person come forward and say, I would not have chosen an abortion if I'd have had the means or the opportunity to do something else. Senate Bill 2 goes a long way to assist young people and people without means to avoid that choice, that draconian choice in the future. And that's what we're working to. One of my colleagues, or several of the colleagues, have said, why are we rushing into that? Why are we going forward? Because in 2021, 8,400 lives were lost to abortion. And you can color that any way you want. We will not stop every single one of them. What we can try, and we can move forward. There's been several quotes, and I have deliberately steered away from the concept of God and the choice of my religion over your religion or your beliefs. But I direct you to the language of the Constitution of the State of Indiana, Article 1, Section 1. We declare that all people are created equal, that they are endowed by their Creator with certain inalienable rights, that among these are life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. I submit to you that they are listed in an order, and in an important order. Liberty and pursuit of happiness will never exist if there is not life. I ask you to support and to join me in the support of Senate Bill 1 and in the concurrence. Please vote in the affirmative. Thank you.
The motion to concur is placed on its passage and machine is open.
Here we go.
Senator Toms to explain your vote. Yes, Senator Toms recognized to explain his vote.
Madam President, Senate. I was hoping for a pro-life bill. This is not a truly pro-life bill. It doesn't protect all the babies. So my no vote in no way has anything to do with most of the no votes that we hear tonight. My no vote is because this bill does not protect these unborn babies, all of them. This bill, 44 pages, the word abortion appears in it 177 times. Termination 8 times. Nowhere in there does it mention babies or protecting the unborn children. Nowhere. So I'm voting no on this bill. I would like to see us do a real, true pro-life bill that does protect each and every baby, unborn child. Thank you.
Senator Alting. Senator Alting is recognized to.
Be very curious to see what Alting has to say.
Thank you, Madam President. As members of the Senate, you know, I've been privileged to be an elected official 27 years and defending women's rights, both as a city councilman in Lafayette and in the Senate, carrying the pregnancy of women in the workplace. The hate crimes bill, where I put specific women on a fine line in there, and co-authored with Senator Bro equal pay for women for the last 10 years on her bill. But the 10 weeks in this is just not enough. It's just not enough, particularly for women in poverty, who I know, women of color, minorities, and others, victims of rape, incest, and women of intellectual disabilities. It got worse in the House coming back to us.
Senator Alting, 1 minute.
Thank you, Madam President. So I've never bought my religion in it. I've just kind of looked at the facts, but I just wanted to explain my vote. Moments we are away from history, and in my heart and in my soul, I know you feel the same way, but I feel like I'm on the right side of history. Thank you, Madam President, and thank you, my colleagues in the Senate.
Man. So, again, if this passes, then...
Is closed. Clerk will tally the roll. Roll call shows 28 ayes, 19 nays. The motion
So,
to concur is passed. Secretary will inform
it
the
does
House of the
not...
passage of the motion to concur. Are there further messages, anything?
This will not go to...
Further business to come before the Senate at this time. The chair recognizes President Pro Tem Bray for a motion.
So this will not go to conference committee now.
Thank you, Madam President, members of the Senate. This time I move the Senate do adjourn until the fall of the gavel.
The questions on the adoption of the motion,
Excuse me, recess until the fall of the gavel. My apologies.
The Senate is in recess until the fall of the gavel.
All right. So let's check out Twitter, see what's going on. So here's where we're at. After 3.5 hours of debate, the Senate has voted 28-19 to send the bill to Holcomb. Protesters outside the chamber are just yelling and singing, and they're kicking it, right? So let's look at this. I'm going to go ahead and stop sharing on one screen and move over to another tab here for you so we can take a look at what's going on. Again, type in your comments into the chat. I would love to talk about this, love to talk about what issues are, really important to you right now. This is just one way for me to get out into our community and just really have a presence. Because District 46 which I know a lot of you don't like. I get the question all the time, like, where is District 46? And I know, like, I'm not looking right at you because my webcam's here and my main monitor's here. So I'm going to be going back and forth a little bit. But here's what District 46 actually looks like. So this is going to be a really large area, and a lot of it's rural. You know, I live right over here in Richland Township in the western part of Monroe County here in Ellettsville. Krista and I moved over here last year. And when I went to go register to vote, I quickly realized that the representative that has been representing this district, he's from out of Terre Haute, and he's been unopposed. If I had not ran this year for office, he would have been unopposed for 6 years. Literally, I mean, just no other names on the ballot. And unfortunately, here in Indiana, that happens quite a bit. And there are 87 Indiana House members that are currently seeking re-election, and 39 of them this year are running totally unopposed. If I had not been running this year, that number would have been 40 because Representative Heaton would have no one to run against him. And I don't think that's right. You know, I mean, the whole point of representation is you're representing the people. And that's why our campaign is guiding principles. That's why our campaign is only taking donations from individual people and not from any type of corporate PACs or anything like that. So I want to hear it. Sound off in the comments. You know, let me know what are your thoughts right now. We're going to go back to Twitter here real quick and see what's going on. So it's the Indiana Democratic Party just tweeted out saying that the Indiana GOP has now made it against the law for Hoosiers to have a safe and legal abortion. This mandate is the worst form of government overreach and will endanger women and little girls' lives across the state. In a state that has Indiana is a state that has the nation's third highest maternal mortality rate. And this is the first state legislature post Dobbs to convene to have a special session on the matter. So the bill's now heading to Governor Holcomb's desk. I think this is going to be a really big hot topic issue for the election this November. Looking at voter turnout numbers from previous years, I actually really want to show everyone this because I think this is pretty crazy. I'm going to show you my win number calculation because I think this is something that everyone should really take a look at. Turn this on for you real quick. So our win number calculation is pretty straightforward. Basically what we're going to do is we're going to, there we go, zoom it up a little bit for you. What we're going to do is we're going to take the last, the last several election cycles, and we're going to look at how many total votes were cast in that election. We're going to take out the presidential elections, the big ones, right? Because more than likely, a lot more people go out and vote during the presidential election than they do during midterm elections like there is now. And so we're going to take the projected turnout, what we think people will turn out in 2022. So a conservative number that would give us, around 59% voter turnout, and that's averaging the last several years, is around 22,456, and that's here in District 46. So to recap, District 46 looks like this, right? So we're needing a reasonable vote goal, which means we're hitting 51%, because, to win an election, you just need 51%. No one wants to win by that number because it's such a small margin. But we need 10,073 people that live in this area. That's Bean Blossom Township, West Steinsville, and Gosport, Richland Township here in Ellettsville. We need Clay Township. We need Washington Township. we need Jefferson Township, and then on the east side of Vigo County, we're going to need Honey Creek, Riley. We need you guys to turn out this November. You cannot sit at home. There's too much at risk here. We have got to flip this district. And the only way we're going to do that is by getting a conservative amount of votes. That's 55% of the vote total, 12,351. And here's the thing. I really do not believe that the majority of people that live in this district are strictly Republican. I just don't believe it, because the people that I've been talking to at the county fairs and outdoor knocking have told me that they're right down the middle, just like I am. They're not quite left. They're not quite right. They're just right down the middle. My Ring doorbell just said that there's someone at my front door. So I'm assuming that Kristen just ordered some DoorDash. Maybe she ordered some chocolate mousse, and I can eat some vegan ice cream here in a little bit. But I refuse to believe that the majority of people that live here are so strictly Republican or only vote straight party ticket. Looking at historical voting records for this district used to be blue. Prior to 2010, this district was blue. And I just think that this district has needed a candidate that is very moderate. And they just need representation, right? I mean, a lot of people that I've talked to have just said that, they've never met their state representative. They have no idea. A lot of the people say they don't even know who their state representative is. I mean, it's just crazy that this is kind of where we're at as a nation and as a state. Going back to Twitter here so we can take a look at what we have going on at the State House. And it's, I don't know. We'll see if Governor Holcomb signs it. I mean, he's been very quiet about all of this. He's definitely been quiet about it. So the Senate has adjourned, and that is the end of the special session. I don't know. That's just kind of where we're at right now. So, I hope that we have a great turnout. And, I think a lot of it just has to come, it's going to come down to getting in front of people and door knocking and talking to them. And just really showing our personalities and what we want to do for our state. I don't know. We're coming up on 2 hours of live streaming now. It's our first time doing this. So I'm probably going to end the live stream soon, but I'm really looking forward to doing this again. I'm hoping to have some special guests on. The software is really cool. It allows us to have multiple special guests at the same time. And I just really hope that you'll keep being loud. Keep being loud. And at this time, I think it's just time to start writing letters to Governor Holcomb and letting him know what Hoosiers think. Because at the end of the day, Hoosiers this should have been put on a public question on November's ballot. It really, really should have just been on November's ballot. But unfortunately, I think the Republicans know that if this were to go to a public question, there would just be an outpouring of support for Democrats. And maybe if we're loud enough, that's what we'll get anyways. Because as Destiny Wells just tweeted out, and I absolutely love this. She posted that November is coming. You want to see what it's like in the Stay House right now? I'll share my screen with you one more time to show you this tab. It is, it's awesome. This is what's happening right now at the Stay House. And Destiny says, November is coming. Yeah. That's right. November is coming, and I think that I think it's going to be a crazy flip. I am so glad to be a part of this. I'm so glad to be running. Like, this is just going to be such a great learning experience for me, and I cannot wait to get out there. And maybe sooner or later my opponent will want to debate me. Who knows? We'll see. But we're at that 2-hour mark, and I want to be respectful of everyone's time, and I'm pretty sure that Kristen has ice cream waiting on me. So thank you, everyone, so much for tuning in. If you have not already, go to curtisforindiana.com, sign up for our newsletter, and you'll be notified anytime. Give us a follow, give us a like, and you'll be notified anytime we go live for something like this. So take care, everyone. Be safe. Have a good night.